If somebody does something that's a little bit outside the lines and there is a big complaint on social media, nobody stands up for them. And the problem is that nobody ever gets canceled for being too woke. So you can say the craziest thing.
Be authentic.
What do I authentically, organically want to share? I go back to the authenticity, right? It's what I love and it's what I want to share. I wanted to do what felt authentic, but also to be authentic.
Shut the F up.
The studio lights were too bright, the air too quiet, and then Bill Maher leaned in with that slow, dangerous smile. So, authenticity, he said, tapping his cards like a judge about to read a verdict. The camera cut to Meghan Markle in the front row.
Ever imagined.
I think she's just got so used to lying that maybe, in my opinion, she believes the lies she tells. I don't know, but either way, she's just been
Poised and polished, giving that composed half smile that says everything and nothing at once. A murmur rippled through the audience. "Don't do it, Bill," a producer whispered off mic.
Broken record.
It's a hate crime, and it's violence, and it's unacceptable, and it's just gotta stop. You know, get your team.
"Do it," someone else hissed. And then he did. A razor of a one-liner, the kind that slices clean. Privacy is great, unless there's a contract. The crowd gasped, then burst, a wall of laughter rolling like thunder. Meghan blinked.
You're complaining about your hard life, and you're so privileged. It's just so weird.
It's ridiculous. I totally agree.
Plays the victim. My castle's too small. The queen is mean to me. They won't let me call myself her royal.
"Excuse me," she mouthed. Bill shrugged. "I'm just being authentic." Emotions ran high as phones shot up. Fans are shocked across social media, and the family was left divided before the segment even ended. "Say it to my face," a voice called from behind the cameras. Bill lifted an eyebrow. "Happy to."
It's the cry bullies of that generation, as I said, raised wrong. So they think when someone disagrees with them, it's a hate crime, and it's violence, and it's unacceptable, and it's just gotta stop. You know, get your teenagers under.
The audience leaned forward, sensing the collision everybody had been waiting for. Was this a roast, a reckoning, or the moment the mask finally slipped? Tonight, lines will be crossed, receipts will be read, and the crowd already erupted. The laughter that exploded across
Listeners.
Because the British tabloids will destroy your life. And I very naively, I'm American, we don't have that.
I'm so unsafe when I'm in Britain. Everybody's trying to kill me. My family would be at such risk. Oh my God.
The studio didn't just echo, it lingered like smoke after fireworks. Meghan shifted in her seat, that polished composure starting to slip, and the cameras caught every flicker. The producers were whispering frantically through headsets, trying to decide whether to cut to commercial, but Bill kept going, eyes sharp and voice steady. "See, the problem is not the drama," he said. "The problem..."
Saga.
Too well aware, Meghan has always been a mad, keen player of the victim card. The nasty Brits who took against her because of the colour of her skin. The social media lynch mob who are so unconscionably cruel to her. The journalist haters who keep writing about what a bully she is. All the negative media coverage she gets has nothing to do with her. It's not her personality. It's not her behaviour. And it's...
is the endless reruns. The crowd roared again. Someone in the front row clapped so hard their drink spilled, and for a split second, it felt less like a talk show and more like a courtroom where the verdict had already been delivered. Meghan leaned forward, hands gripping her lap, whispering something to Harry, who sat stiffly beside her. The prince looked more like a man cornered.
Professional victim routine.
I think Harry's a... I do. I think he's a whining, whinging, complaining, woe is me, I'm the only one that's ever had mental problems. Like, my life was so hard. Everybody's f***ing life.
Than a royal, his jaw clenched, his eyes darting from Bill to the audience like he was searching for an escape route. The audience could sense the tension, and they thrived on it. Phones lit up as fans tried to catch every second. Is this real? Is this scripted? People were asking online. But inside the studio, no one cared. They wanted more. Bill raised a hand to quiet the laughter, the smirk never leaving his face. "You know what I find fascinating?"
conflict. I didn't like feeling forced to be all looks and little substance. And that's how it felt for me at the time, being reduced to this specific archetype.
What has emerged is a self-absorbed narcissist living in a parallel universe with her own.
He asked, pacing slightly. Every single story sounds like a pilot episode that never gets cancelled. First the victim card, then the conspiracy spin, then the dramatic reveal where somehow we're all the villains. The audience leaned forward, waiting for the punchline. Bill paused, then delivered it like a dagger. But it's the same script every season, folks, and the ratings are tanking. The crowd exploded again. Meghan's smile froze. Too wide, too stiff. Harry muttered, "Just ignore him," but she snapped back, "I won't." The microphone closest to her caught the hiss of her words, and suddenly the drama wasn't just on stage, it was bleeding into the audience. Fans gasped. Social media would replay that whisper a million times, dissecting every syllable, every sharp edge in her voice. "Oh, she wants to respond," Bill teased, pointing toward her. "Go ahead, Meghan, the stage is all yours." Or is that Harry's stage now? The audience howled, half in laughter, half in shock. Harry's face darkened, but Meghan placed a hand on his arm, stopping him from standing. She straightened her shoulders, her eyes locked on Bill. "You don't know me," she said, her voice calm but cutting through the noise.
It essentially mocks how they have said that they want to retire into a more quiet life away from the royal family, even though they are simultaneously trashing their families publicly, writing books, starting podcasts, doing Netflix shows, winning awards for their humanitarian and activist efforts. All the above, it's really what all of us private people do, you know?
The crowd hushed instantly, sensing a shift. Bill tilted his head. "That's the point," he replied. "We never really know which version of you we're getting. The tearful princess, the rebellious royal, the activist mom, or the Netflix producer. You've reinvented yourself so many times it's starting to feel like a one-woman reality show." The audience clapped, some booed, but the energy was electric. Meghan's cheeks flushed. "What you call reinvention, I call survival," she shot back. "I had to fight through lies, through tabloids, through a family that never accepted me." Her voice cracked just slightly, perfectly placed, almost too perfectly. Fans watching online argued immediately. Was it real emotion or rehearsed performance? Bill chuckled, low and deliberate. "See? Right on cue. And the crowd loves it." The audience laughed again, this time louder, some even standing to applaud the timing of it all. The divide in the room was palpable, half entertained, half uncomfortable, all hooked. The producers finally made a decision and signaled for the segment to continue without a break. The ratings, they knew, were skyrocketing with every second. But behind the cameras, assistants rushed to phones, reporting updates to networks already preparing headlines. "Bill Maher destroys Meghan on live TV," one whispered. "The internet is about to melt down." Meghan leaned back, her breathing heavy, her eyes glassy. Harry whispered again, "Let's just walk out." But she shook her head firmly. "If we walk out, we lose." Bill caught that exchange and seized it. "Oh, don't leave now," he said with mock sincerity. "This is the best episode yet." The audience erupted once more, and the tension broke into a mixture of laughter, gasps, and shouts. Suddenly, a voice from the audience yelled, "Leave her alone." The camera swung instantly, catching a young woman on her feet, her face flushed with anger. "She's been bullied enough." The room went silent for half a beat, then chaos followed. Some clapped in support, others booed, and Bill leaned on his desk, grinning like a man who knew he had set the entire theater on fire. "Ah," he said, "the defense arrives. Finally." He gestured dramatically to the woman. "Tell us, why is it bullying to point out a pattern? Is it bullying to notice that the story keeps changing? Or is it only bullying when someone disagrees?" The audience member stuttered, unable to respond under the hot lights and countless eyes. Bill gave her a mock bow and said, "That's what I thought." Laughter thundered through the room again, drowning out her protests as she sat back down, humiliated. Meghan's eyes narrowed, fury burning just beneath the surface. "You're cruel," she said, her voice trembling with controlled rage. "You pretend it's comedy, but it's cruelty." Bill shrugged. "Cruelty is when people suffer in silence. This is honesty wrapped in a joke. The only difference is, honesty doesn't pay as well as Netflix." The crowd howled once more, and at that moment, even Harry dropped his gaze to the floor, his face a mask of defeat. Outside the studio, the story was already trending. Hashtags lit up Twitter, clips hit Instagram, fan pages split into camps. One side cheering Bill for saying what everyone was thinking, the other side outraged, calling it yet another public shaming of a woman who dared to speak. News outlets scrambled for panelists to debate the fallout, and paparazzi swarmed outside, waiting for Meghan and Harry to emerge. Back inside, the drama hadn't cooled. Meghan straightened again, finding her voice. "I didn't ask for this life," she said. "I fell in love. I wanted a family. I wanted peace." Her words trembled, and some in the audience softened, nodding. Bill seized the moment. "And yet here you are, on another stage, telling the same story. Peace doesn't look like this, Meghan. Peace looks like silence. Peace looks like stepping away. But here's the twist. You don't want peace. You want the performance." The audience erupted one more time, the sound so loud the cameras shook. The lights glared, the tension crackled, and the line between comedy and cruelty vanished completely. And that was when Meghan stood up. Her chair screeched against the floor, her dress shimmered under the spotlight, and every eye in the room locked on her. Harry reached for her hand, but she pulled away. "No," she said, voice steady. "If this is a stage, then let me take it." The audience froze, caught between anticipation and disbelief. Bill leaned back, folding his arms, ready to see what she would do next. And the curtain for the next act had already been pulled open. Meghan walked straight toward the stage, her heels clicking on the studio floor like a drumbeat. The audience hushed to silence, every breath held as if the wrong sound might break the fragile line between confrontation and collapse. Harry remained in his seat, staring down at his hands, torn between standing by her and escaping the spectacle. Bill leaned casually against his desk, pretending to be unbothered, but his eyes tracked every move she made. The cameras zoomed in, catching the faint tremble of her hands as she gripped the edge of the stage. "You think you know me," she said, her voice sharp yet unsteady. "You sit there, mocking my pain, my family, my choices, but you don't know the battles I've fought behind closed doors." The crowd reacted with scattered applause, some cheering for her bravery, others murmuring in disbelief. Bill tilted his head, letting the silence stretch before replying. "Behind closed doors," he repeated with a smirk. "Meghan, you've turned every door into a spotlight. Oprah, Netflix, podcasts, documentaries. There are no closed doors left. You've invited the world into every room of your life, and now you're upset we're watching." The audience erupted again, half laughing, half gasping. Meghan's eyes flashed. "You twist everything," she snapped. "I speak my truth, and you call it performance. I defend my family, and you call it manipulation. I search for peace, and you call it hypocrisy." A man in the back shouted, "Then stop selling it." The room cracked with nervous laughter. Bill raised his hand to quiet the audience. "Look," he said, pretending to soften, "maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it isn't performance. Maybe it's addiction. An addiction to attention. Because every time the cameras fade, you find another one to turn on." Meghan's lips parted as if to argue, but no words came out. Instead, the audience member who had shouted earlier stood up, emboldened. "He's right," she cried. "We've heard this story 100 times. You keep blaming everyone else, but you never take responsibility." Meghan turned sharply toward her, her eyes narrowing. "Easy for you to say," she hissed, her voice carrying through the stunned silence. "You've never been hunted, never been betrayed, never been torn apart by people who should have protected you." The woman sat down quickly, but the damage was done. The audience was split again, half siding with Meghan, half nodding at Bill. The tension was unbearable, the kind of tension that makes headlines and keeps viewers glued to the screen. Bill leaned forward. Then tell us, Meghan, he said softly, almost challengingly. If this isn't performance, if this isn't a script, then why does it always end the same way? You cry, you accuse, you demand privacy, and then you sell the story all over again. What's the truth? The silence that followed was suffocating. Meghan's chest rose and fell as if she were fighting back tears, but then she did something unexpected. She laughed. A sharp, bitter laugh that caught everyone off guard. You want the truth? She said, her voice breaking. Fine. The truth is, I learned from the best. The royal family trained me to perform, to smile while dying inside, to hide every scar. And now you laugh at me for using the same tools they forced into my hands. The audience gasped, a ripple of shock that spread like fire. Harry finally stood, his voice hoarse but loud. She's right, he declared. None of you know what it's like to live in that cage, smiling for the cameras while drowning in silence. For a moment, the crowd hesitated. Some clapped, others booed, but the weight of his words hung heavy. Bill leaned back, his smirk fading into something more thoughtful. Maybe, he admitted, but difference is, the Queen never complained. Never explained. She carried it with dignity. The comparison struck hard. Meghan flinched, Harry's shoulders sagged, and the audience responded with thunderous applause. Fans online would replay that line endlessly, turning it into a meme, a slogan, a weapon in the endless debate. But the drama didn't end there. From the audience, another voice pierced the air, a British tabloid journalist who had somehow made it into the crowd. Tell them about the letters, Meghan, he shouted, his accent sharp. The entire room froze. Meghan's face drained of color. What letters? Bill asked, instantly seizing the moment. The journalist smirked, holding up his phone as if proof was in his pocket. The ones where she begged the palace for protection while secretly planning her Hollywood move. I've seen them. Chaos erupted. Fans screamed, others demanded receipts, and Meghan's voice cracked as she shouted back, those were private. Bill's grin returned. Ah, the privacy card. Right on schedule. The audience howled, half in disbelief, half in glee. Harry rushed forward, pointing at the journalist. That's a lie. But the damage was already done. Hashtags about the letters were already spreading online, screenshots real or fake circulating at lightning speed. Meghan turned back to Bill, her face a mask of fury and despair. You wanted authenticity? Here it is. Yes, I begged for protection. Because I was terrified. Because I was alone. Because I knew the world would rather laugh at me than listen. For the first time, the audience didn't laugh. Silence spread like a shadow, heavy and suffocating. Even Bill seemed momentarily thrown, his smirk faltering as her words echoed. But then, with perfect timing, he delivered the line that would shatter the room once again. And yet, here you are, he said softly. Still standing. Still speaking. Still selling the story. Maybe the joke isn't on you, Meghan. Maybe it's on all of us for tuning in. The crowd erupted, some cheering, some booing, but everyone electrified by the moment. It was raw, it was ugly, and it was unforgettable. And as Meghan's eyes glistened with unshed tears, Harry took her hand, whispering, "Let's go." But she shook her head once more. Not yet. And the battle raged on. The tension in the studio thickened until it felt like the air itself might split in half. Meghan's refusal to leave was a gamble, but it electrified the room. The cameras zoomed closer, capturing the sharp gleam in her eyes, the way her chin lifted in defiance. Harry squeezed her hand harder, whispering again, but this time his words slipped through the microphone, "This will destroy us." She yanked her hand free. "We're already destroyed," she hissed. Bill tapped his desk lightly, letting the silence stretch. "So here we are," he said, his tone casual but laced with mockery. "A woman fighting for her life, on the very stage she claims ruined it." The audience burst into nervous laughter, and someone shouted, "She asked for it." Another voice fired back, "Leave her alone." The entire studio fractured into chaos, echoing the divide that would soon spill online. Meghan lifted her voice above the noise. You think this is funny? Do you know what it's like to be silenced by people who promise to protect you? To watch your name dragged through mud while the real liars walk free? Her words cracked with intensity, and for a moment, even her critics paused. But Bill wasn't done. Silenced? He echoed, raising an eyebrow. You've been on more stages in 5 years than most comedians in a lifetime. If that's being silenced, then I'm a monk. The crowd roared with laughter, but Meghan slammed her hand on the desk, the sound reverberating through the studio like a gunshot. I survived because I refused to stay quiet, she shouted. Harry, desperate to salvage the moment, finally stepped forward beside her. This isn't about laughter, he said, his voice cracking. This is about the truth. His face was red, his fists clenched, his royal composure long gone. The truth is that my wife has been torn apart by your words, by your tabloids, by your endless cruelty. You sit here laughing, but you've destroyed lives with your so-called comedy. The audience gasped. For a heartbeat, even Bill leaned back, the smirk fading into something more dangerous. Destroyed lives, he said slowly. Or just punctured egos? Then came the twist no one expected. A member of the production crew stumbled onto the stage, carrying a stack of papers that had slipped from a folder. The cameras caught them as they scattered across the floor, and in the chaos, one page landed directly at Meghan's feet. She bent to pick it up, and froze. Bill noticed instantly. "What's that?" he asked. Meghan's hands trembled as she held it, her lips parting. "These are transcripts," she whispered, her voice suddenly hoarse. "Emails. Private emails." The crew member paled, realizing their mistake. Those weren't supposed to, but it was too late. The camera zoomed in, catching the heading, Negotiations for Sussex Documentary. The date printed on it was months before Meghan and Harry's infamous exit from the royal family. The crowd erupted into chaos. Shouts of liar, fraud, and exposed tore through the air. Harry tried to snatch the paper from her hands, but Bill leaned forward, his grin returning, sharp as a blade. "So while you were crying on Oprah's couch about not knowing what was coming, you were already signing the deals?" Meghan's face flushed with rage. "Those aren't real," she snapped, but her voice cracked at the edges. The audience smelled blood, and Bill pressed harder. "Oh, come on. We've seen this movie before. Act 1, poor me. Act 2, everyone's against me. Act 3, Netflix special. And now Act 4, exposed." The laughter was deafening, but Meghan fought back tears. "You don't understand," she said, her voice trembling. "We had no choice. They left us with nothing. The deals were survival." But the audience wasn't buying it anymore. Even those who had cheered her earlier were silent now, shifting uncomfortably in their seats. Harry's face crumpled, his hand dragging down his cheek as if the weight of the moment was crushing him. Bill leaned in, his voice dropping low, almost conspiratorial. "And there it is, ladies and gentlemen. The mask slips. Survival, not silence. Deals, not dignity. Performance, not pain." The audience exploded into applause, some rising to their feet, others jeering, the division tearing the room in half. On social media, clips of the exposed emails trended instantly, with hashtags exploding into millions of views. Meghan lied, Bill Maher destroys Sussexes, privacy for sale. The world was already choosing sides. Meghan clutched the papers in her fists, her knuckles white, her body trembling. "You will not reduce me to a headline," she snarled. "You will not write my story for me." Bill smirked. "Too late. You've already written it yourself." The audience roared, and the curtain of part 3 was already lifting, with the entire theater waiting to see if Meghan would fight back, or finally break. The studio felt like a battlefield now, every laugh a weapon, every silence a landmine. Meghan stood center stage, fists clenched around the papers as though gripping them tightly would somehow erase what the cameras had just revealed. Harry hovered at her side, his face pale, his eyes glassy, like a soldier watching the last line of defense crumble. Bill leaned back in his chair, arms folded, the king of his own arena. "You know," he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm, I almost admire it. The commitment, the endless sequels. It's like watching a soap opera that refuses to get cancelled. Pity Palace Season 5. The audience erupted into laughter, the words, Pity Palace, already etched into the night's history. Meghan's lips parted, but her voice came out ragged. You're mocking pain. You're mocking survival. Her shoulders rose and fell quickly, her breathing shallow, but she forced herself to keep talking. Do you have any idea what it's like to be chased into silence? To know every move you make will be twisted into something ugly. A woman in the audience shouted, "Then stop making moves." The studio cracked with laughter again. Meghan's eyes darted to the heckler, fury boiling. "Easy for you to say," she shot back, her voice sharp as glass. "You're not the one they want dead." Gasps rippled through the crowd. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Harry gripped her wrist, whispering, "Stop. You're going too far." But Meghan yanked free, eyes wild. "No, they need to hear it. I wake up every day wondering if the next headline is my obituary. If the next photograph is my coffin." The room stilled, unease spreading like fog. Some audience members softened, nodding, but others rolled their eyes. Bill tilted his head, feigning sympathy. "And yet," he said slowly, "you walked right into this studio. Under lights, under cameras. Funny how the coffin never stops you from finding the stage." The audience roared again, and this time, even some of those who had pitted her earlier joined in. Meghan's face flushed crimson, her hands trembling as she held the papers aloft. "These were taken out of context," she said, her voice straining. "They don't prove anything. They don't show the fear. They don't show the threats." Bill raised an eyebrow. "Then show us. Give us the receipts. But you won't, will you? Because the story works better without them. Tears are cheaper than truth." The crowd erupted, some cheering, some booing, the noise deafening. Harry tried to speak, but his words were drowned out. Finally, he slammed his hand against the desk. "Enough!" he shouted, his voice cracking like a whip. The room hushed instantly. "You sit here laughing, but you don't know what it's like. You don't know what it's like to lose everything." Bill leaned forward, his voice cool. "Lose everything? You live in mansions. You sign million-dollar deals. You've got more staff than most people have friends. If that's losing everything, I'd like to lose a little more." The audience laughed so hard the cameras shook. Harry's face collapsed into despair, and Meghan turned on Bill with fire in her eyes. "You will never understand," she spat. "You've never been hated for existing. You've never had a family plot against you, to silence you, to erase you." Another twist came from the audience. A middle-aged man stood up, his voice booming. "Tell them about your father, Meghan. Tell them about how you silenced him." The room gasped, the name Thomas Markle hanging heavy in the air. Meghan froze, her body rigid. "Don't you dare," she whispered. The man sneered, "The world hasn't forgotten. You abandoned him when he begged to be part of your life." Bill pounced instantly. "Ah, the missing chapter. The father who vanished from the script. Funny how authenticity only covers the parts that fit the brand." Meghan's eyes filled with tears. "He sold me out," she snapped. "He sold letters, he sold lies, he sold pieces of me. What kind of father does that?" The audience murmured, some sympathetic, some skeptical. Bill spread his arms. "And yet here you are, selling the story too. Apple, meat tree." The laughter returned, but this time it was sharper, crueler. Harry pulled Meghan close, shielding her with his arm, but she pushed him away again. "I'm not hiding," she said, her voice trembling but firm. "If this is a stage, then I'll burn it down before I let you rewrite me." Bill's smirk widened. "Burn it down? Meghan, you've been burning it since the day you walked out of the palace. The problem is, you keep selling tickets to watch the fire." The crowd roared, the line echoing like thunder. Meghan's face twisted, caught between fury and despair. "This isn't a joke," she whispered. "This is my life." Bill leaned closer, his voice low but carrying through the silence. "No, Meghan. This is your show." And tonight, the audience finally figured it out. The eruption of applause and laughter shook the studio walls. Meghan staggered back, her hands shaking, her chest heaving. Harry caught her, but the look on his face was one of defeat, not victory. And as the lights blazed hotter and the crowd's roar filled the air, everyone watching knew the drama had only reached its next brutal peak. The applause was still rattling the studio when Meghan ripped the microphone from her dress and held it in her fist like a weapon. Her mascara smudged under the glare of the lights, and her voice, trembling at first, cut through the roar like glass. "You cheer for cruelty," she said, pointing toward the audience. "You laugh at pain. Do you even realize what you've become? You're not spectators, you're executioners." The crowd fell into a stunned silence, as if her words had slapped them across the face. Harry whispered urgently, "Please stop," but she pulled away, eyes blazing. "No," she said. "I've spent years swallowing my truth. Not tonight." Bill leaned back in his chair, smirking as though he'd been waiting for this explosion. "Executioners," he repeated. "Meghan, the only person scripting your downfall is you. We don't need to sharpen the knives, you hand them out for free." The audience howled again, but there was nervousness in the laughter now, a sharp edge that cut deeper than before. Meghan's hands shook as she lifted the scattered papers high. "These aren't contracts," she cried. "These are pleas. Letters where I begged the palace to let me stay, to let me breathe. They told me I was too loud, too different, too unroyal. They shoved me out, and then they blamed me for leaving." Her voice cracked into a sob, and gasps rippled through the audience. Harry stepped forward, finally finding strength in her vulnerability. "She's telling the truth," he said, his voice hoarse but loud. "I watched her beg. I watched her cry every night. And I did nothing. That's my shame. But don't you dare sit there and tell her she's lying." The audience split down the middle, half clapping, half jeering. One woman shouted, "Then why the Netflix deals?" Another man bellowed, "What about the privacy lies?" The noise built into a chaotic storm, the studio shaking with conflicting chants. Bill stood, his presence commanding, his smirk gone now, replaced by a sharper, colder expression. "All right," he said, his voice booming over the chaos. "Enough crying. Enough pointing fingers. You say you're silenced. You say you're hunted. You say you're honest. Then prove it, Meghan. Prove it right here, right now. What don't we know? What's the bombshell you've been holding back for your next exclusive?" The room froze. Meghan's chest heaved as she stared at him, her hands clutching the papers so tightly they tore at the edges. "You want the truth," she whispered. "Fine. The truth is, the family knew." Gasps filled the air. "Knew what?" Bill pressed, leaning forward. Meghan's lips trembled. "They knew about the threats. They knew about the dangers. And instead of protecting us, they used it. They let the tabloids run wild. They fed the fire, because they wanted me gone. Because I didn't fit the Crown's perfect picture." The audience gasped louder, the words rippling like shockwaves. Harry's eyes filled with tears, his hands trembling as he whispered, "You can't say this. Not here." Bill's eyes gleamed. "So the royal family plotted against you?" he asked, his tone half mocking, half intrigued. "That's the big reveal?" Meghan nodded, her voice breaking. "Yes. They chose tradition over blood. They sacrificed me to keep their image clean. And now you mock me for surviving." The audience exploded in reactions. Some screamed in disbelief, others clapped, while phones lit up as fans rushed to upload the shocking moment. Twitter flooded with hashtags. Instagram Reels replayed her words in real time. "They knew" became the headline of the night. Bill waited for the noise to die down before striking again. "And yet," he said softly, his grin creeping back, "here you are. Alive. Thriving. Signing contracts. It almost makes me think the villains aren't in Buckingham Palace. They're sitting right here, cashing checks off the same sob story again and again." The room erupted, half booing, half cheering. Meghan's face crumpled, but she forced herself to stay upright. Harry pulled her close, whispering fiercely, "It's over. Let's go." But she shook her head once more, eyes locked on Bill. "You'll never silence me," she said, her voice steady now. "You can laugh, you can twist, you can mock. But the truth will outlive your jokes." The crowd rose to its feet, some applauding, some shouting her down, but no one unmoved. The cameras caught every tear, every smirk, every shattered expression. And as the lights blazed hotter, the studio had become something more than a stage. It was a war zone where every word was a bullet, and the final shots had only just begun. The war zone energy inside the studio hadn't cooled, it only deepened. The lights burned hotter, every camera lens locked in, and the audience shifted restlessly, like they were front row at the finale of a brutal reality show. Meghan stood rigid, eyes glassy, fists clenched, her body screaming defiance even as her voice trembled on the edge of breaking. Harry hovered behind her, torn between shielding her and dragging her out. Bill tapped his microphone with a deliberate rhythm, each thud echoing like a gavel. "So that's it," he said. "The palace, the press, the plots. The eternal victim script. But here's the twist, folks. At some point, victims stop looking like victims and start looking like performers who love the stage too much to leave it." The crowd laughed, half in agreement, half in outrage, the sound crashing like a tidal wave. Meghan turned, her hair slipping loose from its perfect styling, and faced the audience instead of Bill. "You cheer now," she cried, "but tomorrow you'll see the headlines. Tomorrow you'll see how your laughter fed the same cruelty that nearly killed me." Her voice cracked, but she forced herself louder. "And when that happens, don't pretend you didn't play a part." The audience froze, the weight of her words pressing down, but then one young man stood up and shouted, "We didn't make you go on Oprah." Laughter exploded again, cruel and sharp. Meghan flinched like she'd been slapped. Harry's fists clenched, and he shouted back, "Shut your mouth." The audience gasped at his outburst, the prince's polished mask gone, replaced with raw anger. Bill seized the moment. "See that?" he said, pointing at Harry. "That right there. A royal tantrum in real time. And you wonder why people don't buy the fairy tale anymore." The crowd erupted again, clapping and shouting, the divide in the room growing deeper. Meghan raised the crumpled papers again, her hands trembling. "These letters prove it," she insisted, her voice shaking but urgent. "They prove what I've been saying all along. The palace knew. They wanted me gone." Bill chuckled darkly. "Or they prove you've been rehearsing the same scene for years. Cue the tears, cue the papers, cue the applause. Same act, different stage." The audience laughed and groaned, the noise deafening. Meghan's face twisted with fury, and for the first time, she shouted, "Stop calling it an act. Stop calling my pain a performance." Her voice echoed across the studio, raw and unfiltered. The crowd hushed. Her chest rose and fell, and the tears finally slipped free, streaking down her cheeks. "I begged for help," she whispered. "I begged, and they told me to smile. I begged, and they shut the doors. And now you sit here laughing because I refuse to die quietly." For a moment, the silence was absolute. Harry wrapped his arm around her shoulders, his own eyes wet. "She's telling the truth," he said, voice breaking. "And if you can't see it, you're no better than the tabloids that hounded us." Then, just as the room seemed to soften, Bill leaned forward, voice calm but lethal. "No better than the tabloids? Funny you should say that. Because every paycheck you've cashed came from selling the same story those tabloids wrote first. Privacy this, privacy that, but the ink on your contracts was barely dry before the tears hit the stage." The crowd erupted again, the pendulum swinging back toward laughter and mockery. Meghan shook her head violently. "That's not true," she screamed, but her voice was swallowed by the roar. Suddenly, another twist hit. A producer's voice crackled over the intercom, "We have to cut, sponsors are threatening to pull." But Bill waved them off, his grin widening. "Oh no, we're not cutting. Not now. Not when the mask is this close to shattering." The audience screamed louder, phones lit up like a galaxy, live streams broadcasting every second to millions around the world. Hashtag surged again, hashtag Bills Meghan, hashtag Royal Showdown, hashtag Pity Palace. Meghan turned to Bill one last time, her face streaked with tears, her voice hoarse. Mock me all you want, but history won't remember your jokes. It will remember my fight. Bill tilted his head, his grin sharp as ever. Maybe. But tonight, history remembers the crowd erupting. And you know what? They weren't laughing with you. The studio shook with the final explosion of laughter and applause. Harry pulled Meghan into his arms, trying to shield her from the blinding lights, but the cameras caught every angle, every tear, every fractured expression. And as the credits threatened to roll, the entire world knew this wasn't the end of the story. It was just the cliffhanger for the next season of royal drama. The studio may have dimmed, but the echoes of that night still rattle across every corner of social media. The laughter, the gasps, the tears, it all became part of a spectacle no one could ignore. What began as a comedy roast spiraled into a storm of accusations, confessions, and revelations that left the audience divided and the internet on fire. Some hailed Bill Maher as the voice of raw truth, unafraid to tear through carefully crafted facades. Others defended Meghan, insisting her words were cries for survival, not performances for applause. Whichever side you stand on, one thing is undeniable. This clash exposed more than just personalities. It revealed the hunger of a world addicted to drama, ready to feast on every crack in the royal veneer. Harry's silence, Meghan's tears, Bill's relentless jabs. The images replay endlessly, each clip sparking new debates, new theories, and new loyalties. Was this a brutal takedown of a public figure who couldn't escape her own contradictions? Or was it the cruel spotlight once again punishing a woman who dared to speak out? The answers aren't simple, and maybe they never will be. But the fallout will keep unfolding, one headline at a time, because the world doesn't look away when royalty, rebellion, and ridicule collide. And now it's your turn. What do you think? Did Bill Maher go too far, or did he finally say what others were too afraid to? Is Meghan a survivor unfairly mocked, or a performer trapped in her own script? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We want to hear every side of this drama. And if this story had you hooked, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe for more explosive breakdowns, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next scandal that shakes the stage. Trust me, you won't want to miss what comes next.